Welcome to another episode of Get Engaged, Lutheran Social Services of Southern California's podcast, where we share heartwarming stories of hope and explore topics that matter to our communities with the help of experts and thought leaders. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Mitchell, and I'm excited to bring you insightful conversations on a wide range of topics. So sit back, relax, and get ready to engage.
We'll be right back with Dr. Tiffany Mitchell and this month's guest. To read a free digital copy of Engage magazine, go to lsssc.org. Or for your free subscription to the quarterly printed edition of Engage, select Contact Us and subscribe.
Today, I'm joined by Pastor Ken Vu of St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Garden Grove. He's also featured in our summer edition of Engage magazine, so please check it out. We'll leave a link at the end of this episode. Pastor Vu, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I had a good time actually reading about just your journey in ministry in the Get Engaged magazine. Would you share with our audience a little bit about your journey into ministry?
Well, I was born into a Christian family, and we were fortunate enough to come to the United States right after the Vietnam War in 1975. And I continued attending church, and I was very active in my youth group and active in my local church. I was also working in the pharmaceutical industry. When my wife gave birth to our first daughter, she died during delivery. So my daughter, my baby daughter, cause of death was asphyxiation. So basically, she couldn't breathe, and she was sucking in the fluid, and she got drowned in her own mother's womb. And that was a crisis of faith for both of us.
A traumatic time in life, for sure.
It was a traumatic time in life. We were a young couple and looking forward to starting a family. Mm-hmm. But that also helped me to focus my life. What is the purpose of life? What is the goal of life? Is it to make money? Is it to get into the American dream, the house and the white picket fence? Or are there more other things that we can pursue? And so that led me into thinking about going into the ministry and serving the Lord and His people. Mm-hmm. I decided to went back to school. So I resigned from my job and went back to school, went back to the seminary, got trained, and then subsequently I got installed and ordained at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. And that was about 28 years ago. And I've been serving at that church ever since.
So a difficult time in your life was also the start of a new beginning, a beginning where there was a newfound faith that would allow you to really touch many, many lives throughout this past 28 years in your ministry.
Yes. Growing up, I hear the verse in the Gospel of John, chapter 3, verse 16, for God so loved the world that He gave His only Son. So whoever believes in Him may have life and may not perish. And so God loving the world, that He gave up His only Son. That really was very, that impressed me a lot. And when I lost my daughter, I felt very close to God because God also lost His Son when He gave up His Son to die for the world. And how much He loved His Son, but yet how much He loved the world to give His Son to the world. And when I lost my daughter, I thought, wow, I'm sort of not like God, but I'm sort of experiencing what God might have experienced when he lost his son. And that's when I felt close to God. And I felt a deeper connection, a spiritual connection. And he becomes real to me through my own suffering.
Oh. I think your journey and your story, in the beginning when I said I enjoyed reading it, I love understanding people's testimonies. Mm-hmm. There's such strength and power in people's testimonies, and I use that to really empower myself. And so just what your journey is beautiful, and all that you're doing to give back is beautiful. And I know there's many things that you're doing outside of just being the pastor of a church, and we're going to talk about that coming up next.
We hope you are enjoying listening to this broadcast, and Lutheran Social Services of Southern California wants to invite you to accept a top secret assignment to join us this year at LSSC's Color of Hope Gala and Awards. We are calling it Mission Possible. You'll enjoy dining, live and silent auctions, a champagne reception, entertainment, and more, all at the beautiful, historic, and mysterious Mission Inn on Saturday, October 7th. You'll be up close and personal with other top agents for change in Southern California who are being honored. All proceeds from the event go towards building a community wellness campus at our current large-scale site in San Bernardino, the Central City Lutheran Mission. You'll get first-hand information on how this amazing and transformative place can be accessed by the entire community, and will also serve as a short-term residence with services for up to 140 of our friends and neighbors who are experiencing homelessness. This recording won't self-destruct, but your opportunity to complete your mission will end soon. For more information and early bird ticket prices, see www.lsssc.org. Sponsors of this one-of-a-kind event to date include Kingsbridge Technologies, Thrivent Financial Services, Surf City, Concordia University, Enterprise Fleet Management, TR Design, and Tovey Schultz Construction.
Pastor Vu, you have a full plate. Not only are you the pastor at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Garden Grove, but you are also a practicing chemist. And so the term that maybe not many people have heard of in the realm of ministry with pastors is bivocational. Can you share a little bit about the term bivocational and kind of what that is, how that is trending now more and more in ministry?
Yes.
With leaders.
Another word for bivocational is tent maker. In the church, people talk about tent making. Mm-hmm. And the example is St. Paul's, who, besides being a missionary, he was also a tent maker. And so bivocational pastors are pastors who work in addition to their church work. And it could be a secular job. It could be a business, and in practical terms, it's a way of helping the church to put less financial constraint on the church, so the pastor can support him and his family, and also do ministry. So I have colleagues who are also doing the same thing I am doing. Pastors who work as doctors, pastors who work as investment advisors, pastors who work as teachers. And it's doing two things at the same time, doing church work and doing a secular job to provide for the family.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of the bivocational work that many pastors are starting to do you said it supports the church in some ways financially, right? Lessening the burden of paying for the pastor, but the skill set that the pastor also additionally brings to the church is a value. And I know that you mentioned that you have some other pastor friends who are doctors and have, in other industries, but you're a part of a group called Good Samaritan.
Yes.
And can you tell me a little bit about the work you're doing with that and how it kind of fits in with kind of the bivocational work that a lot of pastors are doing these days?
Yes. In the year 2015, my son and I had a wonderful experience to accompany Good Samaritan Medical and Dental Ministry. And we were fortunate to accompany them to do medical mission work in Vietnam, my home country. And that was my son's first time being back there. He was born here, so it was quite an experience for him. And I went with the mission trip as a chaplain with three other chaplains helping with the work of the mission. And I came back thoroughly enjoy my work there and feeling very attached to the mission. And subsequently, I've got our church, St. Paul's, to be involved in raising funds to help with the ministry. So each year during the 4th of July, we would be selling fireworks for 4 days. And the amount of money that we raise go to Good Samaritan Medical Dental Ministries. And also it's an opportunity for volunteers from the mission to come and work alongside with the church to fundraise. So it's not only church members, but volunteers, college students, young people who will be going on the mission trip. They also come and join us. Last year or this year was kind of tight because the mission in Vietnam started July 13. And our fireworks sale was July 1st to July 4th. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we would have alumni who are not going on the trip, but they're back here, and they would go and support us by helping us out with the fireworks booth and selling fireworks. But we're committed to the mission, and each year we are providing them with additional funding to help with the mission. And that year I had the opportunity to work with Dr. Vien Doan and Dr. John Branch and other doctors, other volunteers, health professionals. And I've invited Dr. John Branch to come and share his work, the most recent work in Vietnam, starting in July 13 for about, I think, and they just finished the work and they just came back. So I'm very excited to hear the news and the report from Vietnam, from Dr. Branch.
Thank you. And we do have Dr. Branch here who's going to come and give us a little bit of the history of Good Samaritan and also share, to your point, the outcomes of the recent travels to Vietnam. So yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, some final thoughts. And to discover all the many ways you can donate your treasure to Lutheran Social Services to help vulnerable people of Southern California, go to lsssc.org and select Donate.
So I am now joined by Dr. John Branch. He's the chairman of the board for Good Samaritan Medical and Dental Ministry. Dr. Branch, welcome. We had the opportunity to hear a little bit about the ministry of Good Samaritan from Pastor Vu. but I would love for you to share the history of the ministry and the type of work that Good Samaritan Medical and Dental is providing overseas.
Thank you. Dr. Viandone came to the United States in 1975 as a boat person, and he came to faith in Christ through his ESL teacher while he was learning English. He eventually felt led to pursue medicine and hoped one day to go back to Vietnam and help in the Ministry of Health and to share the gospel through that. The problem was that he didn't think he could go back until perhaps the government had changed. So as a result, he had that dream in him for many years, but he had put it aside until we had some friends go to Vietnam on an exploratory trip. They were an American couple, an engineer and his wife, and they felt that the Lord might be calling them toward Vietnam. So they went to Vietnam one summer with their children and stayed for a few weeks and fell in love with Vietnam and the Vietnamese people, and they decided they're going to come back. The Dones were good friends of ours, and so we decided to have a dinner for all of them. And our missionary friends shared their trip and shared their pictures of Vietnam, and Dr. Doan and his wife Grace were amazed that here this American couple who spoke no English, who spoke no Vietnamese, was going to Vietnam. And they figured, if they can go to Vietnam now, we can go too. Mm-hmm. So the following year, when our friends returned to Vietnam, they took the Doans with them. And Dr. Doan, in the meantime, had shared this vision for going back to Vietnam at a number of churches, and young people volunteered to go with him. So it was Dr. Doan and a group of, I believe, 5 or 6 college-age volunteers who went back to Vietnam and did a free clinic. He also hired a retired doctor out of retirement to do some follow-up on the patients. And that was the beginning of the Good Samaritan ministry. The following year, there was a larger contingent. The following year, he approached me and said, "You've got to come see what we're doing." And so in 2021, I joined him and the team, and have been going back since. We were originally just doing medical clinics out of rural schools, most of them in jungle areas, and the following year, 2022, we added dentistry, and the following year we added a surgical team that we could keep at a local hospital and send patients to them. Then we discovered that people were bringing children with heart defects, little blue babies that we know would have a very limited lifespan without surgery. And in America, these surgeries would cost upwards of $200,000. But we found that if we have them done in Vietnam, they can be done for $2,000 to $3,000. So we thought we could raise that. Mm-hmm. And so we made a deal with the surgeons in Saigon, and then eventually up in Hue, and eventually Hanoi, to take our patients and perform heart surgeries on them. This has been an opportunity to use the Good Samaritan model, because we will often find Christian families through our work that are willing to host children and their parent when they come down from remote regions to have their heart surgery. So they'll spend the night before surgery with a Christian family who will then take them to the hospital and sit with the parent during the surgery. And then they will have one more night with the family before they head back up to the hills or wherever their home happens to be. So that's been a wonderful ministry, and it's been an opportunity to include other believers in Vietnam in reaching out to their countrymen.
Wow. So through the work of Good Samaritan Ministries, medical and dental, especially on the medical side, I'm sure many, many lives have been saved. is there one particular experience that stands out the most to you?
Yes, it was one of our early patients. In fact, I think it was probably the first patient that we sent for a heart surgery. It was a little boy. He was about 2 years old. His skin tone was blue, meaning he didn't have sufficient oxygen in his system because of the abnormality of his heart. And we called around and found that there was a heart surgery program in Hue, which is in the center of the country, and that they would take him if we would pay for him. And so we got that arranged, and I turned to Bin, who was my student assistant at the time, who was translating for me. And my Vietnamese is still not very good. But he was translating, and he started crying. And I said, "So, Bin, why are you crying?" And he said, "You know, that little blue child," and he held back the collar of his shirt and showed me a scar going down his chest. He said, "You know, I was that little blue child, and some Christian people came and they got me a surgery, and so I always hoped I'd have the opportunity to participate in something like that myself." So things had come full circle for Bin.
Yeah. I know that there were recent travels a few months ago, or just last month in July. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about those travels and the outcome of that trip.
Sure. We took a team of about 80 to Can Tho. Can Tho is actually in the southern part of Vietnam, about 4 hours drive from Saigon, or Ho Chi Minh City. And we did medical and dental clinics and also optometry, and saw probably 2,000 patients. And people come with all kinds of problems. So you'll see people who are there with their records from a doctor they've seen by driving into the city, and they'll have all kinds of tests and x-rays that have been done for them, and they want a second opinion. But more commonly, and especially when we go to the north, we find patients who have conditions that have been either not diagnosed or neglected for a long time. Very large tumors, cataracts that are thick enough to blind somebody, a lot of goiters and hyperthyroidism and hypothyroidism. Very high blood pressure is not unusual there. It's not unusual to meet a person in his 30s who's had a stroke already. So those are the kinds of things that we see, as well as congenital deformities. And it's been interesting over the years, because when we've taken surgeons, we've had a different mix every year. So we usually have ear, nose, and throat, and one year we had a neurosurgeon who actually did some brain surgery for us, and other years orthopedics. It's always great when we have an ophthalmologist who can do cataracts. So if there's an ophthalmologist listening, we would love to have you join us next year. But those have been life-changing as well. Those are the obvious life-changing events. Our tagline for Good Samaritan is changing lives one at a time. So it's very gratifying to be able to do that, and to include young people, many of whom are thinking about going into medicine or nursing or the ministry, to come along and have a mission experience like this and see that they can participate in changing lives too.
As we do a lot of work here at Lutheran Social Services with youth, and we have a lot of volunteer opportunities where we try to engage college students, high school students, and really just giving back in different ways. And if there was a college student or a high school student who wanted to explore travels abroad and wanted to do ministry work through Good Samaritan, how would they get connected?
They can go to visit gsmdm.org, which is our website, and you will look at the videos that are posted. That will give you a very good overview of what we do, what happens on the trip, who goes. You'll recognize that most of our volunteers are Vietnamese American, and But we have people from all kinds of backgrounds who go with us. You do not have to have a medical skill. We've taken attorneys, accountants, plumbers, you name it, and anyone who has a heart to serve and is willing to go and willing to be flexible, we will find something for you to do.
Well, Dr. Branch, I appreciate you coming on today and speaking with us. It's been a great episode. I'm delighted that there's opportunities for us to continue to connect and be a part of the great work you're doing, and just so honored that Pastor Vu was also able to join us and really kind of open our eyes to bivocational ministry, but then also just talk about his heart for serving through Good Samaritan. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, Tiffany.
Thanks for tuning in to Get Engaged. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review on your favorite platform. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite social media site and keep up to date with all the ways LSSSC embraces, equips, and empowers Southern Californians in your community. Until next time.